Hey everyone, welcome back to our channel. Today we are making these beautiful painted air dry clay earrings. Aren't they cute? They look like ceramic tiles. They have a watercolor feel to them and they are easy and fun to make. So grab your clay and let's get started. I'm Amy and I run this channel with my husband Tanner. We are full-time artists and crafters. And we started this channel to share craft tutorials, product reviews, and business tips for fellow makers. Whether you're here to check out a project or to grow your own craft business, we've got you covered. First, let's talk about supplies. You'll need air dry clay. Any brand will do. A rolling pin or a smooth glass bottle. Clay cutters. This is a set I got off Amazon for our daughter's projects. I have metal clay tools, but I like to keep the tools separated for each material. This one comes with some different shapes. You can use molds too. I got this white mold off Amazon, but these pieces I made with silicone molds I have made previously. You can check out the video in the comments, and I will link it at the end of the video as well. These were made from metal clay, so they are fairly detailed. You'll also need a toothpick or a skewer. This is to make holes for earring hooks. I picked up these metal skewers the other day in the clearance section in Michael's. Of course, you can use toothpicks. But I thought these might be useful when I make beads. You'll also need some jewelry findings. You may need some jump rings, and as well as you'll need ear hooks or wire. And your favorite pliers to put everything together. Sealant is optional, but it helps protect your designs. I'm going to use Mod Podge and UV resin on top to give a really glossy domed look. This is the UV resin I'm going to use. It's one bottle, so there is no mixing. I have a full video on how to use it, and I will link that in the comments as well at the end of the video. You'll need acrylic paint to paint your pendants or earrings. I use acrylic over watercolor because it's permanent, so it won't smudge off when I put the top coat on. Also grab some brushes with a nice point to them. I am also using gesso. This will allow the paint to go on nice and smoothly. Also, if you want to carve or sculpt anything into the clay, you'll need some clay tools. You can add some divots, or you may need one of these knives. You may want some sandpaper. I don't really use sandpaper. I just use a sponge and try to smooth out everything that way. I really don't like the extra dust getting in my workspace, since I do most of my watercolors at this desk. Also, grab some water for your sponge. I didn't want to get my silicone mat dirty, so I put some wax paper on top of it. So we're going to start with prepping and cutting the shapes. Everything should be around 3 millimeters thick. If you have these large popsicle things around, you can use them to keep the thickness pretty standard. I got these from the dollar store to make some doll furniture, so they are pretty useful to have around for crafts. I decided to go with the white clay, since I want to keep the backgrounds white in some of the paintings. First, soften your clay by kneading it a bit. This makes it easier to shape and prevents cracks. I also did a video on how to make paper clay dishes. I can link that in the comments. That video really goes into clay, and it also includes how to sand it properly. These sticks are 3 millimeters high. Because I'm using the sticks, the clay will be uniformly 3 millimeters. You'll need to flip it over to prevent it from sticking. I see we got some lines from using the wax paper, so I'm going to take the wax paper off. And I'm going to see if I can get rid of the lines a bit. So if it's not rolled out evenly, like it's too thick or too thin, it'll take forever to dry, or it may be too fragile. Now on to cutting it. You can go classic with circles or do some abstract shapes if you want to. I'm going to go with more classic shapes. I'm going to use the cutters around the lines I made from the wax paper, and just roll the rest back out. There is a fuzzy edge that can be smoothed out with water once you cut it, but don't use too much water or it will crack during the drying process. The sponge kind of acts like wet sandpaper, so you can use that to smooth it out. So I got it pretty smooth. I'm not sure if you can see that. I'm going to hold it with the wax paper and use the metal skewer to add a hole to turn it into an earring. Putting the hole in when it's on the wax paper prevents it from distorting. I'm going to make some extra so I have some on hand for when I feel like making these again. Don't forget to smooth down the back. So now we are going to move on to the drying and painting process. You may need to let them dry for up to 48 hours. Don't rush it. I flipped them over about 18 hours in, and I seen the clay was slightly damp in the center. So I decided to leave it for one more day and work on the designs I'm going to do. They are dry now. I'm going to gesso them. I'm going to use 2 coats of gesso so the earrings are really smooth. I decided against using the oval-like shapes because they are more like a letter D instead of being perfectly oval. Here are some of the designs I did. I decided to keep it simple because I have to draw 2 of them and kind of make them match. Of course, you don't have to do that. You can do abstract or some blended colors. I use this circle template a lot for my flowers. That way they mostly stay about the same size. I also use this when I can't erase too much. And on paper clay, you can't completely get rid of the line. You're going to need a sharp pencil to do the delicate lines. Here are the flowers I did. The centers were done with the circle template, and I eyeballed it between both earrings. I did end up drawing one slightly smaller. But since it will be on the opposite side of the head, I don't think anyone's going to notice. I don't think you can use graphite paper because the graphite will rub onto the white and you won't be able to remove it, unless you plan to completely cover it with paint. I'm using a kneaded eraser to remove some of the pencil so it won't be too noticeable in the final piece. You can just kind of roll it over the piece. Now on to the painting. I'm using a watered down acrylic technique to create a watercolor effect. Make sure to mix the paint well so there are no chunks of pigment. Let each petal dry before painting the one beside it to prevent bleeding of the paint. This effect kind of makes it look like a dried flower. For the mushroom earrings, I'll paint the background dark blue and add stars. I'm also painting the back of the earring for a more finished look. The diamond-shaped earrings will have a floral design. I'm going to keep the rest of the earring white. And if you make a mistake at all, you can use titanium white just to kind of cover it up. The tiny white dots on the mushroom earrings look so beautiful. They really resemble miniature watercolor paintings. Now we are on to sealing and finishing. First, I'm sealing the backs with Mod Podge, letting them dry for 30 minutes, then sealing the fronts and waiting 2 hours before continuing. Don't forget to seal the edges. For the UV resin, I'm adding a small amount to a silicone cup and using a silicone tool to spread it evenly. Be careful not to add too much or go too close to the edge, as it might spill over. Make sure you check from every angle to ensure full coverage, especially around the edges. Now I cure them under a UV light. I add an extra round of UV light just to make sure the finish is hard and not tacky. Now we're on to the final step of assembling. Now assemble your earrings however you like. Since my holes are lower, I used a wire loop for attachment. If your holes are closer to the top, you can use jump rings. And that's it. Your beautiful earrings or pendants are done. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell for more tutorials. See you next time.